Davey, how are we going to fish this piece of water right here?
Well, you know, that's kind of ideal moving water. There's some fish moving about on the surface. As you can see, there's some small caddis about, and that's getting their interest there. So, you know, my initial approach would be an upstream approach more than anything else. In other words, I want to present my flies at an upstream direction to slightly down to my cross position, pick them up. There are a lot of reasons why I choose to do that. First of all, you know, you basically don't spook fish. That's the first thing, moving up from behind. Secondly, you know, when they're feeding high in the surface like that, you have far better potential hookups when you actually pull the fly back into the fish's mouth as opposed to pull it away. Various things like that. So that would be my first course of action, so to speak. I would fish in an upstream direction.
Since you're the pro on fishing wet flies, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about fishing.
Yeah, you got two choices.
To me, it doesn't look like classic wet fly type water. It's real fast.
Well, you know, the faster the water is at times, the more beneficial it is to you. Firstly, the fish just don't have so much time to, you know, kind of analyze what it is that's coming down to them. That's not to say that, you know, you won't catch the same fish in a slower water scenario, but the thing about it is this: we all know that for the best part of it, the immature stage of that insect's life is subsurface, and that's where the fish, to all intents and purposes, are going to get the majority of their food forms. The majority of fish that you visually see feed on the surface are actually not taking something off the surface. They're taking something that's in the meniscus or slightly just below it. That's their more positive point of vision. Once things get, of course, above the surface where they don't see them so easy in disturbed water like that. So, you know, the option is that you fish flies which are just right in that surface film and just a little bit below it.
Are they the same size as what we were swinging downstream before?
In this situation, I use smaller flies. That's the first thing. If you use a large fly, then two things happen. The first one is the weight of the fly or hook causes that fly to sink. And also, you know, it's a little bit too big representation wise from the fish's point of view. It sees it coming down to it like that, and it doesn't really look too much like what's naturally out there. So no, we scale down in this scenario. Anything from 14 to 16 is probably size 18 hook flies, which is, you know, more conducive to what's happening out there on the water anyway.
So you choose this style based not only on the current speed, but on the stage of the hatch?
Take any natural insect that you choose that is in a stage of emergence, you've got those phases, which of course the ascending of the pupa, whatever, or nymph to the surface, the pupa and or nymph transforming as the dun or whatever emerges, and then thereafter fully emerged, takes off. So, you know, you're talking about milliseconds of time through that transition. And I personally never believe, and never will, that there's a specific stage of that transition which is the only one that a fish is going to hit on. I just cannot accept that a fish sees thousands of emerging insects coming downstream towards it, but it's only going to pick one that's, say, for example, got its tail exposed and part of its abdomen and one leg out. That's my way of thought. So anything, in my opinion, that has got overall a caricature, definition, shape, whatever, and is seen by the fish's eye the right way, you take it.
Well, what flies have you chosen to test this technique with?
Okay, under the prevailing conditions that we've got at this time, we have some small caddis flies emerging. We're going to use this fly here, which is a hare's ear, wet, winged. Second fly I'm going to use is a fly called an invictor. It's a fly invented by a man by the name of James Ogden, but basically it's a yellow-bodied fly. It's got a palmate hackle and it's got a brown wing. That is a real great fly to use at the time when caddis are emerging. That fly we're going to fish in the middle dropper position. And on the tail, I'm going to use a fly which actually serves me the purpose of giving me a little bit of what I call an anchor effect. It's a good fly to use in these conditions. It catches fish, but really what I want it to do is to allow me to effectively fish the other two flies higher in the surface. So basically this is an anchor fly. It's going to act as like a small amount of weight and work these other two flies in the surface.
Is this fly weighted?
No, I don't rarely ever use weighted flies for this technique. The correct way really to go about it is to use an appropriate line to fish your flies. For example, if you want to fish deep, then you fish a line that enables you to fish your flies deep. The addition of weight to the flies, to some extent, probably takes away a lot of the effective movement and mobility that those flies otherwise might have. What you really want are flies that have got the elements of surface or subsurface just fish flies.
Well, this is a fishy looking fly.
Yeah, it's got all those buggy parts about it.
It does.
So, you know, the origination of these flies was for the purpose of specifically of catching brown trout.
And that's sort of what we're doing here today.
Exactly.
Looking for browns.
Yeah, you're looking for browns. You know, and even today, these flies are just great fish catchers, particularly for browns. Rainbows, of course, take them good too, but you work those flies the right way, those browns just, it's irresistible to them. They just got to go eat them.
Well, let's go feed some.
Okay.
A summary of the Upstream presentation of a cast of flies is as follows. Use a short cast directly upstream, but just slightly off to the side so that you don't line the fish. Raise the rod up immediately when the flies hit the water, gaining contact and control all the way down to the tail fly. Track the cast of flies with the high rod, keeping a consistent and taut belly in your line, and let them move past and below your position. If you have fishable water downstream, let them dangle for a bit. Then if you feel you've covered all the water adequately at that distance, wade up a leader's length and cast again. It all sounds quite simple, but in practice there's a little more to it than meets the eye.
Okay, the first thing that anyone that, you know, initiates this style of fishing, or for that matter any other style of fishing, needs to thoroughly understand, although you and I both know and we see it happen so many times, instead of working this shallow backwater on these current seams and taking advantage of the fact there may be some fish in it, they go wade straight out in that river.
Mm-hmm.
You know, always work the closer water in first.
Especially this edge.
Oh,
right
absolutely right. I mean, that's
where they're going to be laying.
Prime lies right there. And you may not get a fish. Just depends. And there's one that decided to hook itself on the flies back behind us right in this seam.
That is a deadly system
That's
you've got right there.
just how you go. I mean, you just stand there talking away about fishing, just leave the flies in the water, and they're that good, and they just can't resist it. Up they come.
Do
and
you
they
really
eat them.
need to even be here on the river to do that?
No. You know, I can tell you a few funny stories about some big fish
I'll get him for you.
That just goes really to prove a point, you know, that fly just animating itself there in that current on that seam was enough to get that fish to want to come and eat it, you know. So my approach really for this is this. I'm objectively looking at this water. I've got a good current seam in front of me. I've got fast flowing water to my right. I'm going to work my flies upstream and just cover this water. Now you've got two options really to do this. The first one is you make a direct upstream approach slightly to the right because the current flow is to our right. And just keep pacing up. Make 3 or 4 casts, no interest, keep going, keep going. The other option is that we fish the upstream method first and then slightly move our angle of presentation across. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go like quarter angle or quadrant, so to speak, from there to there. So we're going to work our way upstream in that direction. We're not worried about fishing downstream because to all intensive purposes, when we've walked upstream, we've fished that water anyway. What we might choose to do if we've walked up whatever, 50, 100 yards or whatever, on our return journey, fish a more across and or downstream technique. Work with right now.
Do what's logical.
Absolutely right, yeah. First of all, I'm going to look for the current seam in which we can visually see. And it's really a short line presentation. That's pretty much all it is. You know, just enough fly line there to enable us to get the cast of the flies out on the surface of the water and just basically dead drift them. Just let them track back at the mercy of the current and the whim of it.
Raising that 11-foot rod back as you come.
That's right. You have to have control. You can't keep the rod at direction pointed straight at the surface of the water because the line's just backing down on us, and should we get a fish hit the fly, well, the rod's up to there before we've even moved them, and we're not going to connect. So what it is really is an action whereby flies are delivered, rod is immediately start to be raised, but not in a way it's actually causing or dragging those flies back faster than the current is actually
taking up
moving.
your slack as it
That's
comes back to
basically
you.
what it is. Yeah.
Without stripping all the line back in, making several false casts to get it back out.
Right. We're just basically presenting those flies in an upstream direction. But I mean, it's not a direct straight upstream from my standpoint. Those flies are actually moving over from my left to my right, so they're tracking down.
By just a few degrees, but enough to,
That's correct. Absolutely right.
come past you.
And long leaders at times are an absolute necessity for this style of fishing. Anything at times maybe up to 15 to 18 feet. For the simple reason that you can alleviate actually the fly line being on the surface of the water. And the more you do that, the more likely you are to not put fish down. It's kind of a short line, kind of concentrated effort. Now,
Point fly does anchor the whole system down well.
oh, definitely it does, yeah.
And I don't see that you're imparting unnecessary drag on it
No,
either.
I'm just letting those flies gradually work their way downstream.
You're just making contact all the way to the point fly.
Uh-huh.
Let the other two do the job.
Absolutely right. And the thing about it is this too. Should a fish come up and strike those flies, well, what's the first thing that trout's going to do when he's took that fly? He's going to go back down.
He's going to turn.
And the fact that he's done that is more than enough for you basically just to hang on to that rod and set the hook in that fish. It's not a vicious strike. You don't need to do that. To a large extent, it's similarly to, you know, dry fly fishing. The advantage with wet fly fishing is that you need, to some extent, a little bit more of a delay time to allow them to do that. But in any event, we're just kind of gradually working those flies around, kicking them and working them inducively in that surface, and hopefully trying to get a fish to respond. See, I can work those flies out a long, long way from where I stand. Because I know, you know.
Skittering one, fishing one in the film, and
That's right. One in the
one
surface,
halfway
one in the
down.
film. And I know from experience, you know, that the length of line that I can comfortably work with to do that.
well, the 11-foot rod makes a big difference in what you can and can't do there
That's
too.
exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, now we've kind of worked this area around and we didn't get anything that was interested to take those flies. Well, they might not be there, I might be doing something wrong or whatever, but now we just take a couple of paces upstream. Pretty much I make about a 2 or 3 yard walk, that's all. Pretty much the length of the leader, that's the way to look at it. If you've got, say, a 12-foot leader on, you've got like 4 yards, well, make 4 yards upstream and just keep working up like that. So pretty much you're just working every option that you've got to effectively get those flies to work in the surface and try to get those
That's a good
fish
rule
up.
of thumb. There's enough weight within those 3 flies to
Keep them there.
unroll
That's right.
the whole assembly to the fish.
I mean, I've had them myself. Look round there, there's a whole bunch of big rainbows just,
Yeah.
and there, that
Right
fish,
on your heels.
you see, he just took me
Uh-oh,
really,
uh-oh.
he took me really, really subtle. There
He
was
took you serious too, didn't he?
yeah, there was no splash, nothing.
He just lightly sucked it in.
He did, and you've really got to be on the ball to kind of get this technique of fishing down to a
That's
mark.
the key for maintaining just some contact with that point fly or that anchor fly.
I do, and what I also do is, you know, I watch, like a hawk, my top drop of fly. That's
Get him for you down here.
that's kind of like my trigger point, so to speak. Insofar as that if he takes that, I'm going to see it anyway. But if he takes the fly that's down below it, I'm going to see that fly do something. It's probably going to just drop down in the surface of the water, and there you go. See him?
Not a bad rainbow.
Uh-huh.
Well, thanks for testing the theory out here, guy.
Yeah. All right.
He's out of there.
A lot of the way of thinking in this country is that such flies are just fish across and downstream, which, you know, is not the real. I'm not saying don't catch fish, but if you really want to understand the arts of fly fishing like this and catch a whole bunch more fish, you have to learn the upstream techniques. And certainly where soft tackles are concerned, they are more effectively fished upstream than they ever are downstream.
Really?
Certainly they are. Those flies are basically not flies that are designed to be moved and pulled against current. They lose all of the elements of life and effect that they've
Just
got.
close up, I guess. don't
Of course they do. And some people argue, well, you know, they may look like a nymph form and this, that and the other. Well, they may well do, but they certainly look more effective fished or tracked down to a fish. But as I said, you know, just kind of learn to the point where initially when the cast is set that you raise the rod without initiating and or causing those flies to drag back to you. See how I lift it up? I'm not doing it in a way where I'm actually jerking my flies back towards me, and I'm just keeping them tracking back down.
Just maintaining contact.
Maintaining contact, that's
Thank
all
you.
you've got to do. But the takes can be extremely subtle. Really keep your concentration level on what you're doing. Raise your rod. Try to get your top dropper fly right there in the surface. But we call it bulging. It's actually kind of like just bulging in the surface. When you first deliver your line and your flies to the surface, try to get the rod tip low to some extent with everything absolutely straight. Because instantly they've landed, it's going to start to track to you anyway. Then just kind of get it up there and just keep your flies moving back towards you.
Well, you can cover a lot of water this way.
Oh, of
Very
course you can. Very,
effectively,
very
too.
effectively. You're kind of keeping and working those flies right there in that surface, within 2 inches of it. Just watch that line and that top fly. Okay, now just move up the water, another 4
A
paces.
few feet.
As you would imagine, you know, if we had a situation here where we had a lot of fish actually rising,
Oh yeah.
then you know the odds are much more in your favor to
Be
get
taking
those
that
fish
top
to take.
fly
But-
away from you, wouldn't it?
Absolutely right. See how subtle that fish took you? I mean, it didn't hit you down hard. He just kind of come up. He gracefully took that fly. Isn't that a neat way to catch a fish?
I'm telling you.
That-
Just saw the line come tight. Basically, never felt him.
yeah,
Just sensed he was there. Took the second fly.
yeah. He took the fly we call the Invicta, which is that fly which was, you know, kind of tied there to represent the caddis in the stage of emergence, which is the next one down. Good job. Right.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well, show me more, Davy.
Well, I will. Well, pretty much what we've did now is to work more of an upstream and slightly to an across angle like this, allowing the flies and that just to track round to our left-hand side. Now, you may be in a situation where you do need to make an upstream cast further than what we've been doing at this point of time. And you may be obstructed in some way or other to be able to physically walk there for one reason or that, or you
Right.
don't want to get there because you might spook fish because you've got to get up on a bit of high ground on the bank side, and you know, various things like that will determine the fact that, well, in order to get my flies presented to those fish, I have to make more or a longer upstream cast. Well, of course, the consequences are when you do that, you have to put fly line on the surface of the water. The thing to remember about it is that when you do that, is you try to, regardless of which side of the current seam and or position you are fishing, you do it so that your flies are at a good angle out, either to the left or the right of your fly line. So no way does your fly line move back down over those fish. And you know, there's a number of ways that you can do that. You can initiate certain casts, which of course kick your flies out to the left or the right. You can move yourself physically to the left or the right. Bottom line really at the end of the day is you keep those flies tracked out to the right hand side of that fly line. And my choice to do it is pretty much to bring the rod tip over on my left shoulder when I'm casting out to the right. And that is absolutely the easiest way just to keep those flies out at that. Because don't forget, we're fishing 3 flies on pretty fine tippet, and we don't want to do something that's going to initiate those flies to get tangled. So by just moving the casting arm over to the left hand side, you see the relative angle we're now getting.
Right.
Okay. As opposed to kind of casting more upstream like this. We can be more direct with an across stream presentation like that. We cast at that angle, approximately 2 o'clock. First of all, we let the flies track down in that position, but as the flies come close to us, we start to raise the rod and just bring those flies around slightly on the turn like that. Sometimes, you know, those fish will literally swim downstream and take fly. I'm sure you have seen that in the past.
Oh yeah, they'll follow it.
Oh yeah.
30,
And-
40 feet sometimes.
And just that little turn around there is just
There he is.
usually enough to take you quite right. And I missed that too. I was concentrating really on talking to you, but just that little turn around like that, you know, is enough to just trigger that fish's response just to take that fly. But it allows us to work further away. And with skill, you can, you know, get a long, long way to, you know, 50, 60 feet. It's not by any stretch of the imagination out of order.
There he is. Same fish, same place. Better fish too.
Yeah. Just a little subtle take.
Very.
And you know, a lot of times when we fish this way, even though we've missed the fish, we've not did anything really serious to upset him. You know, we've not stuck the hook in him, pulled it out, he's just missed the fly. And he may well come back and look for it a second time round.
Well, I think the fish like your technique.
Yeah? It's done real well for me most of my life. It certainly has. Okay, that's your turn. Go catch a fish.
It is important to remember that fishing wet flies upstream is not a long line affair. You might have the urge to make that great distance cast, but you will not be able to gain control of your flies and recover them quickly enough to fish properly. Remember that in Davy's style of wet fly fishing, you are not just a delivery system, but an active participant throughout the entire presentation.